It's very nice to meet all of you today. Today I'm going to talk about my bachelor's project called The Wheeled Body. And the aim of this project was to create 3 outfits for 3 women who are all using wheelchairs. In the project, I chose to view the wheelchair as an extension of the body. What you see here is the result of my project, The Wheeled Body. And I just wanted to show you a sneak peek of what we're going to talk about today so that you have some sort of visual idea of what I'm talking about. But first, I'm just going to talk a little bit about myself and my background. So I completed my bachelor's degree at Design School Kolding in 2017. And I chose to do my 5th semester at London College of Fashion in Culture and History Studies. And this semester gave me a lot of theoretical insights and knowledge about the history and culture and sociology of fashion. This inspired me to do my master's degree in culture and history studies at the University of Arts London in culture and histories of fashion. And when applying for the master's degree, I knew that I wanted my dissertation to be like a theoretical extension of my bachelor's project. I wrote my dissertation on fashion and inclusion, and my research focused on both the historical and sociological aspects as well as representation in fashion. And also, as part of my master's degree, I also did a collaboration with a school in North London called Whitefield Academy Trust, and this is a school for children with special needs. So, since completing my studies, I've established a design studio in South London called ETRA, and ETRA is a cross-disciplinary design studio. So that was just a little bit about me. Again, in today's presentation, I'm going to talk about my bachelor's project, The Wheeled Body. I'm also going to be sharing a few insights from my master's dissertation that I thought would be very relevant for you. So here's what we'll talk about. I'm going to share with you the background for the project. Then I'm going to talk about the business collaboration, the participants, making clothes for a body that deviates from the norm. And finally, I'm going to share with you some insights from the project, and you will be able to ask questions at the end of the presentation. Okay, so background. How did the idea arise? First of all, what is a body? Throughout the years of my bachelor, I had many thoughts about what a body is. What makes something perceived as part of the body while something else does not? First, I was sure that I wanted to work with clothing and AR, augmented reality. I found it exciting to work with what one can turn the body into and what limitations and opportunities that come with this. My thoughts ranged from thinking about adding a layer to the body as one does with AR to contemplating the body and its interaction with various aids. So in the process, I began to understand that not all aids are perceived as being part of the body. It's like there is a silent selection taking place. Prosthetics are made and must simulate a part of the body as accurately as possible, while wheelchairs clearly distinguish themselves from the body. Wheelchairs must very clearly resemble a machine. So I thought there was something very interesting here that needed further exploration. Here are a few examples of some experiments that I did on body extensions. Where does the body end and where does it begin? So I had this hypothesis that people in wheelchairs are thus confined to a certain identity, a specific gaze from the outside world, because the wheelchair is always an appendage that is not included in our overall perception of a body as we do with prosthetics. So I started thinking about what clothes would look like if one considered the body and the wheelchair as one unit, like it's the case with the body and prosthetics. I asked myself how the clothes would look if we considered the wheelchair an extension of the body. Additionally, I was interested in creating an expression that shouldn't be toned down, be in the background, not cause fuss or disrupt the order. I wanted to challenge this. For me, fashion is a language that it's communication between people and cultures. And through our visual appearance, fashion serves as a tool to express our identity and social affiliations. But not all groups in society have the opportunity to use fashion this way. And that's why I thought it was so important to work in this field. So a little bit about my business collaboration. I got in touch with Tom Andersen, who is the CEO and founder of a wheelchair company called TA Service, and he was incredibly helpful. I spent a whole day at his company where I saw how wheelchairs are made. I spoke with various employees in different departments, and I met customers as well. He has a very close relationship with all of his clients, because a wheelchair is something that you have for many, many years, and it's a part of you in a way. So something that I really took away from this visit was that I got to try out a couple of wheelchairs myself. Of course, and this is me that you see in the photo. Of course, this couldn't give me the full experience of what it's like to navigate the world and life as a wheelchair user, but it did give me a more bodily and sensory understanding that I couldn't have gained otherwise. Specifically, I noticed how my clothes felt on my body when sitting, how every movement in my body shifted. For example, I had to use muscle groups that I'm not used to using. Also, quite literally, my perspective and point of view of my surroundings changed. So let's talk about the participants. Finding participants turned out to be harder than I initially thought. My situation was quite different from my fellow classmates who called modeling agencies and quickly hired models with standard sizes, or they simply started draping and using the standard dress forms at the school's workshops. I had to search for quite some time to get someone to participate, and I also had a participant who, on second thought, cancelled because she just did not feel that she was at the right place personally, and she didn't have enough energy to share her life with me. So, of course, we can all relate to not wanting to having our pictures taken, but it also feels incredibly intimate to talk to people about their relationship, their getting dressed, finding clothes, and of course, fitting clothes directly onto their bodies. And I think this shows that this can be a very sensitive topic, and the field that this study is situated in is connected to the inner experiences and identities of these women. And I think that's very important to keep in mind. So finally, I got in touch with 3 women through some of my acquaintances, Judith, Jenny, and Helle. All women have muscular dystrophy, but they were all very different. For example, one had always been using a wheelchair, and another one had just recently started using a wheelchair. So a few details about different needs. So Judith uses an electric breathing tube from her throat, and it's connected to a ventilator at the back of her chair. Because of the tube, she was always wearing loose, lightweight scarves around her neck to cover it. She found it very hard to find shirts that were big enough to cover it, but at the same time not too heavy. She was often feeling cold, and because of her weak muscles, she couldn't wear very heavy fabrics. Her spine was not straight, so her posture was asymmetrical, making it challenging to find shirts that would fit properly. For Janne, it was important to wear something that could not be too tight around her legs, and it was specifically hard for her to find trousers that were comfortable, that were not too hard to put on and take off. And that was also the same case with Helle. She also found it hard to find comfortable trousers. She was also often feeling cold. So even though all of my participants have muscular dystrophy, their needs and bodies in wheelchairs were all completely different. And I think this is quite symptomatic for this kind of work, that it's very hard to standardize the needs, and that's definitely a challenge for us as designers. So naturally, I had many hypotheses about life as a wheelchair user, and I needed to speak to these women to learn from them about their lives and experiences with clothes. I also spoke to other women with physical disabilities to get some more understanding and insights about their needs. What they told me was that finding any clothes at all is difficult when one has a physical disability, but finding fashionable clothes is almost impossible. Many of them buy clothes online because they either can't enter physical stores or fit in the fitting rooms. They all had someone to help them change and alter the clothes that they bought online so that it would fit them properly. Two of my participants mentioned that they seek to wear clothes that make them blend in when they're out, and they don't want to get more attention that they are already getting by taking up more space with a wheelchair. But they also said that it sometimes feels that there is an expectation from the outside world for them to do so, to blend in. So what they told me confirmed my hypothesis about being limited in the way that they can express themselves through clothes. The last one of my participants, however, was quite the opposite. She really liked shiny, glittery surfaces, dyed hair. She even had custom-made pink glitter wheelchair, and she also wore long fake nails. You can see her here in the photo. And she had her own nail salon in her home, and she invited me into it and showed me all her work and her awards that she had won. And we actually ended up doing a small collaboration. She did the nails that you can see here in the photo for all the women in the final photo shoot. So it's important. An important part of my project was to get to know the women that I worked with. Because this project touches upon sensitive areas, it was important for me that they felt comfortable and safe in the process. They all welcomed me into their homes, and we had very good conversations about their clothes routines, their clothing strategies, and their relationship with their bodies. So, making clothes for a body that deviates from the norm. So have we always perceived the body the way that we do now? How has the body evolved to its current state? So in the late 1800s, as society modernized and cities grew, people started seeing themselves and their bodies differently. New public spaces emerged in the big cities, and consumption came to play a big role in the way that people constructed their appearances. And this affected how people dressed, how they presented themselves to each other. It also changed how people were expected to look and how their health was regulated. At this time, science began to classify bodies with tools like statistics and the body mass index that perhaps you're all familiar with. And this replaced old beliefs about unusual bodies with scientific explanations. So at this time, what is called in disability studies is called the medical model was invented. And that was used as a tool to divide people in regard to their physicality and ability to work. And the medical model emphasizes that a person with a disability is disabled from birth, and that the disability is seen as a failure that is inherent in the individual's body, and that it's the individual's own problem. So the social model, on the other hand, sees the disability as a socially constructed problem, and this model was created as a reaction against the medical model. So why is this relevant when designing clothes for people with disabilities? So I believe that it's important and relevant because it reminds us that it's us as designers, together with architects and urban planners, who have the ability to shape a world that includes everyone on a more structural level. So, function. What role does function play when designing clothes? In fashion and clothing, we can distinguish between different forms of function, what I would call the material function and the immaterial function. And the British sociologist Joanne Entwistle says this about what I would like to call the immaterial function of clothes. Dress or adornment is one of the means by which bodies are made social and given meaning and identity. The individual and very personal act of getting dressed is an act of preparing the body for the social world, making it appropriate, acceptable. Dress is the way in which individuals learn to live in their bodies and feel at home in them. And for this group of individuals, the immaterial function of clothes is often overlooked. In fact, most of the clothes that are available for wheelchair users look like this and this. And here, at least that's my verdict. It's clear that the primary focus has been on the material functionality rather than the aesthetic and immaterial function of the clothes. And so on the one hand, these garments are and need to be incredibly functional in a technical sense. But the main purpose in my project has also been to look at a more subtle yet incredibly important functionality that comes from clothes and manifests in life and interactions in everyday life, which is how we create our identities, how we signal belonging, how we dream of and experiment with potential selves through the clothes that we choose to wear. So which functional elements did I choose to include? I did intentionally try to challenge some functional parts. For example, I used a lot of pockets. To me, it's the detail that signals functionality the most. Pockets also signal independence. Historically, pockets have been applied to men's clothing only, allowing them to walk more freely and independently, while women have had little handbags occupying their hands and arms. So with the pockets, I also wanted to create a decorative effect, because in very functional garments, all the unnecessary decorative elements are stripped off. So I thought this was an interesting element to incorporate in the collection. Another functional element was on Judith's skirt. So a lot of the constraints meant that I had to rethink practical and functional elements. In general, I would say that there are two main practical challenges to focus on when designing for this group. The first one is the seated position, and the other one is the closures. They should not press on the body, and you should make sure that the clothes are easy to put on and take off. So with regards to the seated position, I think we can all relate to clothes not feeling comfortable after sitting in the same position for a certain amount of time. So I solved this problem by in Judith's skirt, I simply designed the skirt to only have the front part, which was sewn in the sitting position to avoid excess fabric and creases, which could lead to pressure ulcers. The back part only covered the lower back so that it would still keep her covered and warm. And I put the closures on the sides with press buttons that are easy to open, and that would allow her to easily put it on and take it off. On Hella's trousers, much like I did with Judith's skirt, I shaped them so that they were in a fixed seated position. Again, I removed all excess fabric that would be in places that are bent when sitting, such as the hip area and thighs area and behind the knees. I also took advantage of the 90-degree angle of the knees. So I positioned the pockets in a horizontal line, that the position that they would be in if someone was standing up wearing them. I made the back of the trousers much higher so that it would support her lower back, and I lowered the front part again to remove excess fabric that would happen when sitting down, to avoid them feeling uncomfortable. And again, I focused on creating the closures with press buttons that would be easy to open and close. Another example was Judith's jacket. So Judith's wheelchair was quite flexible and was able to move in many different directions. So I was thinking, how can I create a garment that can adapt to this and follow this flexibility? So I chose to create a jacket that was sort of modular, and I added a lot of press buttons that made it possible to click it together in different ways depending on the usage. So when hanging down, the arms would be flat pieces that you could simply shape and make sleeves by fastening the buttons when you wanted to wear it. So I chose to take advantage of the stability and strength of the wheelchair. That enabled me to hang the heavy jacket on the chair and only let it rest on the body at very few points. I also took advantage of the headrest that allowed me to shape the collar around it, making it stand up in a way that would not have been possible otherwise. Finally, I wanted to create a replacement of the loose, lightweight scarves that Judith was wearing to cover the breathing tube. And I solved this by creating a simple turtleneck where I added a lot of extra fabric on the front so that it would create space for the tube and at the same time cover it. And I put the closures on the back part exactly at the gap between the headrest and the back of the chair so that it would not put pressure anywhere. So which impractical elements did I choose to include? Intentionally, I wanted to keep impractical elements to challenge the usual conception of wheelchair users having to be limited by functional constraints. So one element that I chose to add was on Hella's trousers. I kept them intentionally very long because I wanted to take advantage of the fact that her feet were in a fixed position, not touching the ground. Another example, I chose to make a very long, lightweight veil on one of Jenne's pieces. It would drag along the ground or fly in the air after her when she was moving very fast, and I thought it would look very beautiful. But again, not very practical. So, movement and fitting. In terms of movement, I did some experiments to explore the movement and outside space of a wheelchair when it moves around, because its movements are, and the space it takes up is very different from how a body moves and takes up space. And this was also something that I did when I tried the different wheelchairs at the business that I worked with. So in terms of fitting the clothes was a challenge because my participants were all located in 3 different places around the country. And I did travel to each of their homes several times, but I also had to make a lot of the clothes at the school based on the measurements that I took. And of course, these ones are very experimental in nature, but you can see here that I put a dress form on a stool with wheels to make it resemble a person sitting in a wheelchair. And this allowed me to do a lot of the fitting as well in the workshop. So since my project was an experiment, I had to come up with my own way of doing a lot of things, including measuring and fitting. I came up with a system for each one of my participants because their wheelchairs and their needs were all different. So this included measuring the circumference of the body part, as well as the head support and the electric ventilator in Judith's case. And you can see that all the measurements are different in each case. Also, the armrests with the remote controls had to be taken into consideration, like an extra arm, if you will. Janne's chair also had hooks on the back, and I made sure to make holes in the clothes so that they would stick out, so that she could hang the back that she was normally hanging there. So that was another thing to take into consideration. In terms of materials, as I mentioned, some of my participants had reduced strength in their limbs, so it was important to use lightweight materials. At the same time, they easily felt cold, so the solution that I found was that to use some light woolen fabrics. The heavy fabrics that I used were only used on areas where they could hang and use the strength of the wheelchair, so they would not be put directly on the bodies. In terms of colors, I chose to work with red colors and shapes. And first of all, it's a color that has strong bodily and corporeal connotations, and it's also the color that is used to make people stop and pay attention. Finally, it's a color that signals power, warmth, and compassion. And I wanted my clothes to be the opposite of the clothes that are already available. These clothes often seek to minimize the visibility of the wearer. So I developed the visual expression through various experiments that I did. Here are some experiments on extensions of the body. Here I explored asymmetrical versus symmetrical shapes, distorted shapes, different body parts merged together. And all of this together turned into the visual expression of the collection. And again, the result. So here you can see Jenne's veil hanging from her dress on the left-hand side, and you can see the pockets that I have added to the different garments. Hille's pants, the center of the slide, hanging, embracing the footrests without touching the wheels. You can also see Judith's skirt and flexible jacket that is resting on the back of the machine when she is not wearing it. So, insights. Language. Language shapes reality, and by using the right words, we ensure being respectful to the groups of people that we're working with. And I learned this myself at the beginning of the project. A woman kindly corrected me when when I wrongly said a handicapped or a disabled person. So it's important to keep in mind that a person is separated from their disability, and saying that a person has a disability or is using a wheelchair removes focus from the person's identity. Standardization. So it can be a challenge to standardize sizes and shapes for people who belong to this group. The disabilities often materialize in different ways depending on the individual. They use different aids and different wheelchairs. However, there are things that can be standardized, such as closures. It should be easy to put on and take off. It should be fitted in a seated position to remove all excess fabric that is not necessary. And of course, the use of materials. It's important that these materials are, for example, like suitable for their different needs. So should be flexible, or denim is probably not the right material to use because it's very heavy and inflexible and creates like very heavy seams. So that's another thing that you can sort of standardize. Put yourself in their shoes. Try a wheelchair yourself. Put yourself in their position to try and see the world through their eyes to get a better understanding of their needs. And finally, constraints. So there are a lot of constraints when you come with a mindset that is used to doing things in one way. And you need to meet these constraints with a curious mind and ask yourself, how can you use them to your advantage? It opens up a lot of new opportunities and things that you had not thought about before. And it challenges all the things that are taken for granted. You start paying attention to details that you do not necessarily think about otherwise. I actually think this makes us better designers, just start thinking about things in a new light. So finally, if any of you would like to get in touch with me, if you have any questions, if you need advice or guidance, I'm more than happy to help. And also, if any of you are thinking about working with inclusivity or disability for your bachelor's projects or other future projects, please get in touch and reach out. I'm more than happy to help. And you can contact me via my Instagram. You can also see my work there. You can also send me an email. And finally, I just want to let you know that I've added all the references here in case you want to read a little bit more about this. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mathilde. That was lovely. Thank you. Should we just give a round of applause? Thank you. Thank you very much. That was brilliant. That's just what we need also at this point, because we are meeting the participants tomorrow.
That's great.
All the students have met them online, but now they're going to meet them in real life. So
nice.
We have time for Q&A, don't we?
We do.
Any questions for Mathilde?
I was wondering how you find a compromise between sort of the design decisions that, or like design identity that you have as a designer, and then what your user wants, because you are making decisions on like the colors you were going for and the visual expression, but it also needs to be something that the people you're designing for actually want to wear. And like, how do you find that balance?
Yeah, so that was a decision that I sort of needed to make from the beginning. Like, is this going to be a collection that I'm going to to make that will have some sort of continuity, and where I would also be able to show what I had learned throughout my bachelor. So it was a conscious decision to create my own visual expression, and of course keep their needs in mind, and to do it so that it would embrace all the different challenges and needs that they had. So for example, I chose to make pants for the ones that had that as a challenge, and I chose to make a garment that would sort of solve the issue that Judith had with the scarf. But you're right that it wasn't like they were not the ones who created the final visual expression. That was a decision that I made to have that as that would be like my visual expression. So it's a very good question.
Thank you. Can I just comment on that as well? Yes, very, but always has the good questions. So, but it's a really good question, and it is something also to bear in mind that if you were to make clothes for people who are not designers, make what they want, they don't have the imagination to what could be. We're training daily on imagining a different way of doing it, a better world, or funny, or whatever it is that drives you. So you know so much about fabric, about colors, about shape and fit and possibilities with it, and they know something about what it's like to be in their body and what their body are for fit and so on. And as you say, the thing about the fabric is a really good point as well, how heavy it is. But I think it's really important that you as designers show what could be, right? So if you are very sort of flamboyant yourself or really into colors, you go with colors. Or as you say, you did it also for sort of empowering the person, not blend in, but to stand out. I'm here. Look at me. And with all the connotations you have in this case on red. So please do remember to bring your own identity, your own design DNA as well, but also of course you can do it on the continuum, so you will also have to deliver, we usually, we call it from wild to mild, so it might have some wild ideas, but you go with some milder ones, or you go all the way with the wild one, but just showcase what it also could be, right? So we need to as you showed, there are trousers out there with the function, they're dead boring, right? So my dream would be for you to make clothes that really empowers your participants in such a way that people who do not have the disabilities or the challenges actually could see themselves desire that kind of clothes. Right? And there needs to be a designer present in order to do that. And this is what you can do. You can add something to what they didn't know they wanted. Right? And you might end up making something that's like, great, I'll be in that photo, but I'm not going to wear it shopping in Netto on Tuesday, right? But it could also be that they then could be a compromise. Okay, if you could just turn it down a bit here or a bit there, So definitely, just like you did not forget yourself or your design, your design capability, neither should you do that. But it's a very good question. Any
and it's a balance also.
Any other questions for Mathilde? We talked a little bit about before, because what we've done this morning is the students have started measuring themselves. Also measuring when they're sitting down and trying to understand, and what can we also ask for tomorrow and what to be aware of. So therefore, it's just on point. We got this lecture from you. That's important also to understand the shape and the size of the wheelchair if your participant is in a wheelchair. But we were also talking about how it can be a challenge, talking to somebody whom you clearly you don't know them that well, and you want so many very personal information about them, and how it can be either awkward or you're a bit shy, or is there anything you would like to add on to what you've said so far about it, what it was like and how you really made that connection you were talking about?
So yeah, I think it's just a matter of starting like with a conversation and making them aware that like you are going to talk about some topics that relate to their bodies and their personal experiences. So just sort of like get a feeling of where they are, and just be open and like be honest about what this project also includes, because perhaps they don't really know the process of designing and how much like contact with the body they need, or how much you also want to know from their personal experiences. So just be very honest from the beginning, because then they also have the opportunity to say, actually, I don't feel that that's for me, or instead of doing that along the way. So
that's a really good point, because we really could say that what we always get very close to the person we make close to. I mean,
yeah,
in a way that even, I mean, it's always something that we always have to overcome. And I was telling earlier how I start talking a lot when I measure people, and just to not having an awkward silent situation, you know. So
yeah,
and you do end up in sometimes the weirdest. I mean, personally, to me so far, I think the one where I was aware that it could be a little awkward, but I wanted it not to be about me, but making the person more relaxed, was I had a male. There was one of the students was doing trousers for a man, and it just wouldn't fit around the crotch, right? And it's the best thing to do if it doesn't fit around the crotch. You get your picker out, and then you open. Some of you might have seen a video with Lenny Kravitz where there was unintentional happening there. But anyway, you open it so it eases out, and you can see, yeah, okay, there's a centimeter missing, or half, or too much, like that. But that is a situation where you just have to be yourself comfortable, because if you're not, they are going to feel very awkward. So you just have to lean on, this is the way we do it. And I was crawling around there in the crotch way, and it's totally normal to do. But I remember it, right? It's totally normal to do. But so you really feel very comfortable yourself. This is how we need to get around the body to make it.
Yeah, that's very right. Also, I think you should also remember that when measuring to not, if any of your participants are using wheelchairs, remember to measure the wheelchair, and be curious about its movement, because I think when it's not a body, you may forget that it can also move, but just in different ways. So that's also something that you need to measure and take into consideration.
It's really good. And one thing we talked about as well, and please, if you have any questions, otherwise I'm going to ask, because I'm the one with the many questions. We did also talk about, what if our participant cannot get off the wheelchair or lift? You know, how do you make sure to get the right measurements, right, on the back or on the side or across from the hips? How do you make sure to get the right measurements then?
Yeah, so none of my participants were able to like get out of the wheelchair. I measured everything while they were sitting. So some of the things I had to sort of guess a little bit, like how would that be around the bottom part, and then just fit it afterwards. Make little adjustments and corrections. So it's not possible, at least that was my experience. It wasn't possible to like measure everything like you can do on a body that is standing up. But again, there might be other situations where your person would be able to like stand up a little bit or move a little bit, but it wasn't possible in my cases.
Johanna has a question.
Yeah.
You need to come up here, so perhaps.
Hi. I was just wondering how you can talk to your participant if they don't want to focus on the things that like makes them different from the norm. Like, how do you get some insights if they won't, like, if they don't like to talk about it?
Oh, that's yeah. That, I mean, I guess that would then be uncomfortable for them to talk about. So I don't know if I would even want to talk about it if they did not want to share it. Like perhaps so a way that you can also get insights from people. This is what I did in my master's dissertation. I asked people. I asked 3 wheelchair users to simply make a little diary, like a wardrobe diary, wardrobe studies, where they simply just describe what they were wearing each day for a week. And I mean, it doesn't need to be that elaborate. It could just be like a few days where you're asking them more like less personal questions, but questions that are open and will allow them to add details that perhaps reveal a little bit about their relationship with their with getting dressed and their strategies. So by asking them like, oh, so what's the occasion today? What are you getting dressed for? Why? What are you wearing? Why are you wearing that? That actually gives you a lot of valuable insights into what people are thinking when getting dressed, and some of the constraints they're probably meeting, some things perhaps that they're not even like aware of, that they perhaps wouldn't share with you if you just ask them directly. So this is a method that can give some insights, and if people don't feel comfortable like just talking and opening up. So because it's about something else, it's about an object that they're wearing, but it's still a part of them. So not sure if that answers your question.
Yeah, it's a really good point. So if you can't, you can always talk from a third thing that you can share.
Yeah.
Materials or colors or
whatever. That can say more, a lot of things about person's thoughts.
Okay. Any other questions for Mathilde? Not for now.
No. Fine.
Well, if you had been a bit nearer, we would have invited you to come. So
thank you. Yeah, unfortunately, I'm a little bit far away.
Yeah. So thank you very much, and please, if you do come to Denmark for visits, then you're always welcome to come and visit us, right?
Thank you, and good luck with your projects. I'm really looking forward to seeing the projects.
We'll keep you posted, right?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Mathilde. We'll be in touch, right?
Yeah.
Have a lovely day.
Yeah, you too. Bye.